I'd say the biggest mistake lawyers make is that they think that as long as they're not doing anything fraudulent or criminal, that they're in compliance and they're totally fine. Unfortunately, it's more detailed than that. There's more tasks that have to be managed and more reports that have to be completed. Just because you're not doing anything wrong doesn't mean you're doing everything right. And
Hello, welcome back. This is Andreea Parc at Alive Again podcast, a podcast where attorneys and other professionals meet to discuss real life challenges and how our decisions shaped our journeys. Wonderful news. Alexa, besides working on her new collection for this year, started teaching at one of the fashion schools here in New York, and that's the reason why she's not here with us today. Now, we have the pleasure of having with us today Amy Woods. She is an accountant and an expert with over 20 years experience with IOLTA accounts and trust accounts, working with attorneys and law firms. Amy, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for your time. It's such a pleasure to have you.
thank you so much for having me.
It's extraordinary that I found you on LinkedIn and I read so many of your posts. And this IOLTA trust accounts, it's a very touchy subject for a lot of attorneys.
Yes.
And I would like to start by asking you from your experience, what are the common mistakes that attorneys make? And we all know that we're all well-intentioned. What do you think that the most common trust accounts mistakes are?
I would say the biggest mistake lawyers make is that they think that as long as they're not doing anything fraudulent or criminal, that they're in compliance and they're totally fine. Unfortunately, it's more detailed than that. There's more tasks that have to be managed and more reports that have to be completed. Just because you're not doing anything wrong doesn't mean you're doing everything right. I would say that's the biggest thing that lawyers get wrong, and then from that stems all these issues that can come up.
And we all know that most attorneys, as you said, know, well, I'm not stealing from my clients. But what do you think it's that disconnect that occurs between their daily practices and the IOLTA regulations or rules?
One thing I tell lawyers is to think of it, to pretend like it's your bank account. Like when you put money into a bank, if your bank wasn't regularly keeping track of the money going in and going out, and if there were mistakes that were being made that weren't caught, you would be very upset. This is your money. You want to get statements every month showing how much is going in and how much is coming out, and you don't want mistakes to be made. That's the exact same. That's how the trust works. This is not the lawyer's money. This is your client's money, and you are responsible for it. And the bar wants to make sure that you are doing the same thing that a bank is doing. You're providing reports that show all the money going in, all the money coming out. If mistakes are being made, you're catching them quickly and fixing them. So I think the disconnect sometimes is that lawyers just see this other bank account on their statements that they kind of still associate with their firm, but they need to understand this is not their money and they have a very high ethical obligation to protect and manage that money well.
I know that you work with attorneys on audits. Can you please walk us through? Because there are attorneys who have been audited once or several times, and others were lucky enough not to be audited at all. Walk us through the process of an audit and what you can do for the law firm.
So I'll give you two examples that happened just last year. One law firm came to me. They had just received their audit notice. I had not been working with them, so this was a brand new client, and they were in a panic. They weren't sure if they were in compliance. They were kind of doing some management stuff, but maybe not everything they should have been. And when you get the audit notice, you only have a few weeks to get everything prepared and ready for the auditor. So in those few weeks, I was scrambling and trying to help them as best I could, but there were some mistakes that were made prior that could not be fixed before the audit. So we fixed what we could. They went through the audit. So all of those weeks leading up to the audit, the lawyers were very stressed. It was very stressful for them. They were scrambling, trying to get the documents that they needed. And then during the audit, they were very stressed. And then afterwards, obviously the auditor had a list of changes and things they needed to correct. And so that was stressful to them as well. And it took resources. And during the whole thing, they were paying me to help them and they were using their firm's resources. So it took a lot out of them and they weren't able to focus on practicing law during that time frame. So that was one client I had last year. Another client I had last year, I've been working with them for over 5 years. So when they got the audit notice, the partner came to me and said, "Hey, should I be worried about this?" And I said, "No." I took the notice. I had all their documents ready and organized. I printed everything the auditor needed. I showed up during the audit and answered the auditor's questions. The only thing the partner had to do was show up for 10 minutes at the end of the audit, answer a few legal questions for the auditor, sign some paperwork, and then they were done. There was no weeks of stress and panic leading up to it. And then once the audit was over, they passed and there was nothing to do afterwards. So that's the difference, is that when you know your trust account is being managed properly, there's none of this stress or this weight hanging over you going, okay, if I get audited, what am I going to do? So it's a pretty big difference.
I want you to explain what is an audit, because a lot of people believe that you're getting audited only when you did something wrong, but that's not always the case.
It is not always the case. Now, most states have random audits, and the number of random audits a state does just varies. Some states don't have random audits, and in those states, you will not get audited unless someone complains or they do suspect something. But there's only a couple of states that are like that. Most states have random audits. And so if you get chosen for a random audit, you're just randomly chosen from, the group of lawyers in your state, and you have to submit the documents to them. So anybody can be randomly audited at any time in the states that do random audits.
And I was the CFO of a large corporation here in New York, and the gentleman was also a New York State attorney. So I worked on a couple of audits of his law firm. I'm talking many, many years ago. And the main attorney that worked on this with the accountants, mentioned that he was lucky that he was only audited for the past 6 months. Do you know, is there a time period that the auditors want to see?
So again, every state is different. I know North Carolina, when you get randomly audited, they will look back 12 months. In Connecticut, if you get audited, they only look back 6 months. But here's the catch. You have to maintain records. Some states are 7 years, some states are 6 years. If during that audit, the auditor sees anything that makes them suspect any kind of issues, they can go back that entire 6 or 7 years and look at all your records. Maybe you're safe. Maybe your mistakes are past that time and the auditor won't see anything that's going to red flag them, but maybe you're not. So it's a pretty big risk to take because you're risking your reputation, your law license, your career. I think it's something lawyers need to take more seriously.
Yeah. From your experience, have you seen any early signs of a trust account to go south or to have issues?
One of the things that I'm dealing with right now is Not only do lawyers need to be doing the three-way reconciliations, that's one of the best ways to catch errors quickly, but they also need to understand how the three-way reconciliation works and what it means, because I'm working with a law firm right now who has been doing three-way reconciliations every single month for years, but a year ago they had some outstanding deposits, and those deposits have stayed outstanding every month through the past year. That should be a red flag. That should never happen. If you have an outstanding deposit, you might have one at the end of the month, like you deposited the money on the 30th, and so it might be outstanding just for that month, but then it's going to clear the bank the first few days of the following month. If you have an outstanding deposit that continues on for months, that means either that money never made it into your trust account, or it didn't get matched properly when you were reconciling. It's great to do your three-way reconciliations, but you also need to understand what you're doing so that you can catch the errors. So now I'm having to go back with this firm and go back a whole year, and I found the error and I'm fixing it and I'm moving forward now, but we're having to redo a whole year's worth of reconciliations and reports because they didn't see this as a problem when they were doing it to begin with.
So what is the three-way reconciliation?
Yes, so the three-way reconciliation is, so a normal reconciliation that your bookkeeper, your accountant doing is comparing your general ledger, which is a record of every transaction into your trust account and every transaction out. They're comparing your general ledger to your bank statement. And the only difference there should be outstanding transactions. So that check that you mailed to your client a month ago that they still haven't cashed, that's going to be on your general ledger, but it's not going to be on your bank statement. So that's the only difference between those. And like I said, every now and then there might be a deposit that's outstanding, but it would be a deposit that you make at the end of the month, and then it's cleared at the beginning of the following month. The three-way reconciliation just adds the component of your client ledgers. So your client ledgers are all the balances your clients have at the end of the month, that all of their balances add up to the total you have in your trust account. So your three-way reconciliation is where you're comparing your client ledgers, which is all of your clients' balances at the end of the month added up. That number should equal the same as your general ledger. So you're comparing the three-way is your client ledgers, your general ledger, and then your bank statement. And if you have any issues in any part of that, you need to go and research and find where those issues are. The sooner you find the issue and the faster you fix it, the less of a problem it's going to be. I have so many times where clients don't fix issues for several months, and then it snowballs from being just a recording issue to being an issue that costs them thousands of dollars. So, yes.
Because you mentioned that when you send a check to a client, you need to make sure that you have the exact amount in your account.
Yes, you don't want to take more out of their account than they actually have, which can be so easy if you're not keeping track of your ledgers, because your trust bank account may have $100,000 in it. But when you're looking at the individual breakdown of each client, that client may only have $100. So if you write a check out of their ledger for $500, they don't actually have that money in there. That means you're taking that money from some other client's ledger. So yeah, just because you have a lot of money in your trust account doesn't mean all of your clients have a lot of money in their ledgers. So yes, very important.
And even 1 cent means trouble if you don't have it.
Yeah, it's funny, as an accountant, we're taught to be cost efficient. So in your normal operating bookkeeping, if you're off by a few pennies, you might take a few minutes to look for it, but it's not worth a few pennies to spend a lot of time on it. So you're just going to make an adjustment and you're just going to move on. In your trust accounting, you can't do that. The bar will crack down on that. So.
It's not funny, but it's the reality. That
I actually had a friend who had so the bank messed up and it cleared a check for the wrong amount. And so he was getting ready to close his trust account. He was retiring and closing, and he still had like a couple of pennies in his trust account because this check didn't clear properly. And so he went to the bar and said, hey, this was a bank error. Can I just move this money to operate and close everything down? And they said, no, you have to wait until you can sheet that or get it to the client. And so the client didn't want him to send a check for a few pennies. So he ended up having to leave that trust account open for 5 years so that he could escheat that to the state treasurer. And it was so frustrating to him. So yeah, they're very serious.
Now that you mention this very weird word and concept of escheating, very few attorneys know about it or are aware that they need to do this. Can you please explain what this is and why it's so important for some attorneys to follow up with this?
Yes, so escheating is where if you have money in your trust account, and every state is different. Some states are 3 years, some states are 5 years, but let's just use 5 years as the example. If you have money in your trust account that's 5 years old, and you can no longer get in touch with whoever that money belongs to, whether it's a vendor or a client, you have tried calling them, you've tried emailing them, you've tried sending them mail, you can't get in touch with them. That money is considered abandoned. When you have abandoned trust funds, you have to transfer that money over to the state treasurer. I think New York and New Jersey are slightly different. They have a specific organization that you transfer that money to, but most other states, it goes to the state treasurer. And this includes outstanding checks. So if you have a check you've written to a client that's outstanding for 5 years, that is considered still in your trust account. And if you can't get in touch with that client to get them to cash that check, that's money that has to be escheated to the state. So this is one thing that law firms don't tend to keep track of. And if you get audited, not only do you get in trouble with the bar, but you get in trouble with the state treasurer, and the state treasurer can charge you penalties and interest. And depending on how long that money has been sitting there, that could be a significant amount of money. So yes, it's very important to keep up with the escheating and making sure you're doing that in the time frame and properly like you're supposed to.
That's something that very few people know.
Yes. And if you're listening to this and you're saying, oh my goodness, I haven't been doing that, most states have a program called voluntary disclosure, where you can go to the state treasurer and say, hey, I didn't realize I was supposed to be doing this. Will you please forgive me for the penalties and interest and waive it? And I promise moving forward, I will do it correctly. And then at that point, you submit all the funds that should have been submitted prior, and then going forward, you do it correctly. And most state treasurers will honor this. There's a whole program you can go through. So there is a way to get out of the penalties and interest if you follow this program. So don't just go to the state treasurer and go, I haven't been doing this, here's my money, because they will charge you penalties and interest.
You have to be nice and accept responsibility.
Accept responsibility and follow their procedures.
Yeah. We all know how attorneys are living with stress and pressures and burnout and workload. From your experience, did you see any link between all of these issues, or I wouldn't call them issues, lifestyle basically, of attorneys and IOLTA accounts or accounting errors that resulted from their mindset or their overload of work and stress and pressures?
Yes, I would say this is a common with solo practitioners who start out very small, and so they are small and they want to do everything themselves. So they're doing their own bookkeeping, they're doing their own trust management, and then they start growing and growing, and the pressure and stress and everything starts weighing on them, and that's when they start taking shortcuts or pushing something off to the side, not prioritizing their bookkeeping or not prioritizing their trust accounting. And it makes sense because you only have so much time in a day, you only have so much bandwidth, and so with all this stress and pressure on them, they're still trying to handle everything themselves. I feel like attorneys don't reach out for help soon enough. Once you start getting stressed and your firm starts growing and you start getting overwhelmed, you need to reach out for help and outsource. Outsource your bookkeeping to someone. Outsource your trust management to someone. Usually, the hourly rate that you're outsourcing this to is way lower than your hourly rate. So by outsourcing it, you're getting something off your plate and you're able to spend more time doing your work that is making you money. And someone who's an expert at the bookkeeping or trust management is spending their time doing those tasks for you. I just see this over and over again where an attorney tries to do everything and they get overwhelmed and then they stop doing their bookkeeping, they stop doing their trust management, and then they get into trouble because it's months down the road, they haven't done anything, and there are so many issues and errors. It actually costs them more now for someone to come in and clean it up. So ask for help when you start getting overwhelmed.
I meant to say that probably it will cost them more someone to help them with the audit and gather all the information from the past than if they would do it regularly.
Yes. So back to those two law firms I was telling you about, the law firm that came to me in a panic and wanted me to help them prep for the audit, my bill to them was significantly higher than the law firm that I've been working with for years, and everything was organized, and all I had to do was print the information and present it to the auditor. It costs so much more money to clean up and prepare for an audit than it is just to have someone maintaining your trust accounts on a monthly basis, for sure.
And I believe it goes further than the money issue. I think the stress of having the audit, it's much more than just how much you need to pay for somebody, an expert to help you.
Yeah, because it's more than just the money. When you get audited, if you don't know that if you're prepared, you're thinking in the back of your head, I could lose my law license. If they find something really serious, even though I didn't mean to, you could even face jail time. So it can really be a stressor. And even when a law firm is not facing an audit, in the back of their head, if they're not properly managing their trust account, it's always kind of back there like, is this going to be an issue one day? If I get audited, what's going to happen? How much trouble am I going to get into? So, yeah, I think it's an ongoing stress on the shoulders of lawyers, definitely for sure. Yep.
So the peace of mind outweighs the money that you're paying an expert to do it on a regular basis, to do your accounting
Yes,
on
I
a
would
regular basis.
definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
And usually, I talk to clients and they talk about how they hate the accounting work. And that's one reason they avoid it, because they want to be a lawyer. They didn't become a lawyer to have to do all this accounting. They hate it, they avoid it, and it takes them longer to do it than someone like me. I come in and it only takes me, a couple hours a month to have everything managed properly, whereas it could take them several hours a month, and that's wasted time on their part. So yes, I definitely think there's a huge benefit to outsourcing this.
And I think that's the difference between an attorney who passes the audit without any issues and the one that actually the auditor finds some issues.
Yes, because if you have someone who knows what they're doing and knows what they're looking for, they're going to catch those errors quickly and fix them. And if you get audited and you did have some errors, but you fix them quickly, that's totally fine. You're still going to pass the audit because you showed the auditor, hey, everyone makes mistakes. We made this mistake, but we caught it and we fixed it. And that's totally fine with the bar. They just want to make sure you're catching those mistakes.
And I know that everything in life is mindset. Everything that we do is mindset. What would be one mindset shift that, from your experience, that you would give an attorney around trust accounts? Something that would reduce fear, give them peace of mind, and limit disciplinary exposure, basically.
I would tell them to keep in mind, look at your trust account as if it were a bank account for your clients. Just like if you put money to a bank, you're expecting your bank to do proper records of what's going in and out, and if there are any issues, taking care of them quickly. You have that expectation. Well, the bar and your clients have that expectation of you when you are in control of this trust account money. So I think that taking that seriously, understanding your obligations and the regulations is very important, and understanding that if you're a busy attorney, this is just something that you should outsource to someone. You are still ultimately responsible, so it's important that you outsource to someone who knows what they're doing. But outsourcing it to someone takes it off your plate, and you still need to review it. A good person who's helping you with your trust accounting is going to go through the reports with you each month. It takes like a couple of minutes, so it doesn't take a lot of your time. But you want to be making sure that they are also doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I definitely think having the mindset that this is a serious priority and that you need to be outsourcing it if you're so busy you can't do it.
I think that this mindset is very important to take things seriously and not avoid or ignore issues. Because I work with attorneys and I know from my own experience, believing that the thing is not there is going to disappear. It's not going to disappear. It's just going to expand and it's going to take over your life. From your experience, how often did you see trust account problems stem from avoidance rather than taking care of what needs to be done?
I think that's a very high issue with lawyers because, like I said, they didn't become lawyers to be accountants. Sometimes, if I had to do the work of a lawyer, I would be totally lost and I would be miserable. But I love trust accounting. I do it every single day and I love it. So if you flip that around, lawyers love what they do, but they don't want to do accounting work. So if they're having to do this thing that they don't enjoy doing every single month and they're not doing it every day, so it's not familiar to them every single day, then of course they're going to avoid it and not want to do it. And avoiding it, not wanting to do it, is when things snowball. So I see so often where a mistake is just a recording error, but because it wasn't fixed immediately, it snowballs several months down the road into a mistake that now is going to cost thousands of dollars. So I do think that avoidance is a big problem, and that lawyers they don't want to be accountants, and I think that's fair. They didn't go to law school to learn accounting, so...
Yeah, it's funny that in law school here, I took a wills and trusts course. And the first thing that the professor told us is that trusts and wills and estates take a lot of math, and that attorneys are not good with math. So that attorney should work with an accountant to make sure that the estate and the trust and all the funds and property of the client is well taken care of. So now, knowing that attorneys are not good with math, what would be an advice that you would give an attorney who believes something is wrong with their trust account and they don't know where to start and what to do?
I would definitely say bring in an expert, bring in an accountant or someone who specializes in trust work so that they can look through your records and see if there is an issue. And if there is an issue, they're going to know how to fix it. So even if you spend tons of time yourself looking for the issue and you find it, you may not know how to fix it. So instead of wasting a lot of your own time doing that, I would hire an expert to find the problem, if there is one, and then to help you fix it.
That's wonderful advice. From your experience, have you noticed if there is any ethical rules around the trust accounting that are most often violated, of course, unintentionally?
I think it depends on the state. So every state has different regulations. In North Carolina, which is where I'm at, there are lots of rules that are not followed because we have so many detailed regulations that lawyers don't even sometimes know about. I'd also say that if you are practicing law in one state and then you start practicing law in another state, you can't assume that the trust regulations are the same for both states. You need to check the new state and make sure what they require. So I think that's happened a lot where attorneys work in one state and they know those rules, but then when they start practicing in another state, they just assume the rules are the same and they're not. So, did I answer the question?
Right. Where do they start? Hire an expert, basically. They don't need to carry the overwhelm of figuring out what's wrong if they believe something is wrong. Right. Hire an expert.
And the other thing you have to keep in mind is that states sometimes change their rules. And are you going to be in charge of keeping track of that and seeing, okay, now this rule changed, I need to change my procedures? If you hire an expert who specializes in trust accounting, they're keeping track of all the rules in all the states and when they're changing. I do that. So when a rule changes, I know, okay, we need to change some things in this state for all my clients that are in this state. And a lawyer doesn't have the time to keep track of all of that.
Yeah. And you know that I have a soft spot for solo practitioners and small law firms because I was there and I know the struggles. And I also know that we have kind of this shame that, well, I'm an attorney, I should know everything. This is not the case because if you are practicing, for example, family law, you don't need to know accounting or trust accounting or all the rules because like a surgeon, for example, if he specializes in hand surgery and you broke your hand, you go to the hand surgeon, you don't go to the brain surgeon. So
Right.
attorneys must have this mindset shift of it's okay to ask for help. I don't need to know everything. I don't know everything. And it's okay to call an expert and help me with this.
Yeah, I completely agree. So what do you think is, so this is a very common problem with lawyers. Why do you think they think that way?
Because we're control freaks. We think we know everything. We think we can handle everything. We think that we are the best of the best. And we can't accept, a lot of us, the fact that we actually need help and we don't know everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Everyone's brains are wired differently. So it's okay to not be excellent at accounting. You are excellent at whatever area of law you're in. It's okay to say, okay, I'm not good at this. I need to find someone who is good at this.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen so many great attorneys that had downfalls, major downfalls, because of their mindset of I can handle everything.
Yeah. That makes sense, yeah. And lawyers are so smart. I think sometimes they look at the trust account and they say, well, this should be super easy for me. It shouldn't be that difficult. And it's not that it's difficult or it's not that they're not smart in that area. It's just that it's a different way of thinking, a different way of doing things. It's numbers. And like you said, a lot of lawyers are not good at numbers. So outsourcing this does not mean you're not an excellent, smart lawyer in person. It just means this is an area that is not your expertise.
And just accept it like everything in life, you know. After everything that happened to me, now I'm very vocal on radical acceptance. Yes,
I love
I
that.
accept that I messed up, that I'm flawed, that, you know, we're human. We all make mistakes. And we can start to change things when we accept.
Yes. I completely agree. When you accept, yep, and hand over.
All right, so thank you so much. Now, it's one question that I ask every guest at the end of the podcast, and that is, besides your work responsibilities and everything that you do, what is one activity in your life that makes you feel more alive?
I can think of several, but I think the one I love most is traveling and meeting new people. I love traveling to new places, eating new food, and meeting new people and interacting. It just makes me so alive, and it really re-energizes me if I've had a time frame where I'm just like so overwhelmed and kind of getting down. If I go on a nice trip, I feel all better.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Amy. Now, where can people find you?
Yes, so I'm on LinkedIn under Amy Woods. My website is ioltaconsulting.com, And you can also email me at Amy, that's AMY, at IOLTAconsulting.com. So those are the three best places to find me.
Perfect. I will also include this information in the description of the video, and definitely I will encourage people to contact you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your wisdom. We'll keep in contact with you for future discussions.
That sounds great. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Our listeners, thank you for listening. For more conversations and more guests, please subscribe and follow us. Thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks.